Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is not uncommon for the Energy Club to be a trailblazer in its sphere, in formulating and discussing ideas, in launching different events, including online events. They've been online ever since the quarantine or lockdown happened, and we have become more or less used to our regular online meetings. However, today's meeting is a different story because for the first time we have a prevalence of international representatives on the panel, and for the first time the discussion will be going on in English. As far as the organization of our procedure is concerned, I draw your attention to the chat. If you at any moment feel that you want to interfere and provide your opinion, please do not hesitate to write in the chat either to everybody or to myself. I'm Andrei Kulikov, the moderator of today's discussion. And of course, I'm deeply grateful to the Energy Club for providing me with an opportunity to listen to such distinguished speakers and to practice my English, among other things. So I would invite Mr. Valery Bezos, who is the Vice President of the Energy Club, to open our discussion with introductory remarks.
Good morning, Andrei. Thank you. Thanks to all colleagues who took the opportunity to join our meeting. Ukraine is facing a crisis in renewables and in the energy sector as a whole in general. Having its own specifics, the problem is not unique for Ukraine, and it's important for us to hear and to understand the European context and the context of our partners in Europe. Moreover, foreign investors are actively working in Ukraine in the sector, in renewables, and have their own interests. And it's very important for Ukraine to develop foreign investment sector for the whole economy of the country. So we invited representatives of embassies to be able to hear their opinion, probably their views, experiences in the fields of development, renewables, and energy sectors. One of the reasons of the crisis, as we see it in Energy Club, is a lack of communications and maybe even a lack of transparency of decisions in the sector. It's quite usual for the energy sector in Ukraine to be not very transparent, and the procedures and the decisions are made mostly undercover. So I think we have some results of such history of covered, not transparent decisions. And we came to the situation that not only policymakers, but our people, our businesses not quite understand the importance of energy transition, the importance of challenge of the general need to develop green energy sources and so on. So we see from the side of Energy Club huge importance of improved communications. The Energy Club is actively involved in the process of finding solutions to see the way out of this crisis. And we plan a number of communication activities, and not only activities in itself, but we see opportunities to form at least draft decisions and to show these ways to key stakeholders, to policymakers. So please join us with your ideas of the ways which we could explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bezos. And Valery Bezos mentioned that it is important for us to understand the European context. As important for everybody, I think, is to understand the broader picture of what's happening in Ukraine with renewable energy sources and about the crisis of payments that was also mentioned by Mr. Bezos. So I asked Tatiana Milenko, who is a Master of Laws and Attorney at Law Counsel and Head of Energy Practice at Hillman Partners, to outline for us within probably 6 to 7 minutes the current state of the problem in Ukraine. Go ahead, Ms. Milenko.
Thank you, Andrei. Thank you very much, Energy Club, for inviting me. Here we have indeed very esteemed and highly represented participants, and I will not take too much time for me to speak, as I think most beneficial would be to hear representatives of embassies, consulates of many countries we have here online. And for example, Canada has lots of investments in renewables made in Ukraine, meaning Canadian businesses, among others, other countries. So pretty sure this topic is a pain point for many foreign investors, including from Canada, from Bulgaria, from Czech, etc. So straight to the point, today I looked at the official website of the guaranteed buyer, and the most up-to-date information dates back to 23rd of October, and according to the official data indicated here, the debts of Ukrenergo against guaranteed buyer increased, and now it amounts to 24.1 billion hryvnias. So the increase constitutes about roughly 2 million hryvnia within a very short period of time. So the tendency is quite negative. And if we see at the payment, let's say payment discipline of the guaranteed buyer to the green producers, the green electricity producers, we can indeed testify that 100% we have for August, while for September, it only slightly more than 60%. And for October, for the 20 days of October, it just 7.6. And I should say that 100% payment for the August is explained by various situational reasons. One of the core reasons was that Ukrenergo made a payment to the guaranteed buyer out of the allocation interconnection allocation capacity tariffs. So we should not really expect the mirror that 100% payment for each month will repeat month after month. In the short perspective, at least. Getting back to the situation overall, indeed, there is working group at the Ministry of Energy working on elaborating best ways to solve the situation and to make payments more, let's say, more frequent to the satisfaction of the green producers. Also, certain law drafting work is done, though I should say that we do not see any particular real steps that were made to make this problem solved in a quick and efficient manner. And undoubtedly, this is something that is of great concern to the foreign investors, to our clients. And as you could recall, the hot topic of international arbitration emerged maybe in the beginning of this year. That was, of course, this is something that foreign investors start thinking much before. But that was really on the agenda in the beginning of this year, where it was not clear if the memorandum will bring any fruitful benefits and outcomes. Then there was a light of hope that the law 110, followed by the signed memorandum, will be really at least a major element of the solution of this problem. However, as we could see from the statistics I just outlined, the payments are still scarce, and this all is detrimental to economics of their electricity producers, to the projects. Of course, if we talk about large producers with large installed capacities, their situation could be slightly different. Their businesses in some way are more sustainable than smaller companies with small installed capacity. However, all suffer. And again, another practical side of the problem is that there is not even one project that is not financed through debt. So all producers have loans. The majority of them have unpaid loans to the bank, to the financial institutions. And of course, since they do not have a cash flow originating from their produced and output electricity, they encounter obvious problem of payment under their loans. And despite of numerous talks with banks for restructuring, I mean, the problem still exists, and it's really urgent one. Back to arbitration, few words. I will not really abuse my time, and would be happy to share the floor with other participants. That just arbitration, investment arbitration and commercial arbitration are two ways available for foreign investors. And as you know, commercial arbitration just allows to claim breach of contract and ask basically for payment or for electricity produced and contractual fines, while on the investment arbitration, the foreign investor could claim much more, and the compensation, there are different basically things that a foreign investor could claim to compensate, including costly arbitration proceeding costs. So the protection guaranteed is under BAT, which Ukraine concluded with many countries. BAT stands for Bilateral Investment Treaty, and under ECT, which is Energy Charter Treaty. And while there are a few cases when renewable producer seek protection under BAT, the majority of cases are under ECT, as it is more energy specific instrument, and it allows for broader clauses and protection there. So for this, I would like to pass the floor to Andrei, and if there will be any particular questions, either from attendees, we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Milenko. We already have a question in our chat. However, it will be asked later because it does not pertain to the particular topic with which we started. And of course, Ms. Milenko said the tendency is negative. However, there was no tragedy in her voice. Obviously, she knows some ways of how to deal with this. And of course, there's a wealth of foreign experience that Ukraine can borrow and should indeed borrow, with the view that, of course, it cannot be directly and unchangedly applied to Ukrainian circumstances, but there's a lot to learn. So I would ask our foreign participants to share their opinion on, and actually the information on how the governments of their countries are providing support to the renewable energy sources sector and energy sector in general in this pandemic situation, and what recommendations might be given. Maybe you have already thought of this. Anyone wants to volunteer? Yeah, I see that Mr. Barbalet of Canada has made a move. Mr. Barbalet, would you please launch the discussion?
Thanks very much. Appreciate the opportunity, Andrei. On this particular topic, as the question that you asked is, I think it's an important one and an interesting question. It's one that we'd have to do more research and get back to you on. I'm not prepared to speak on that particular topic right now.
Right. You can also choose any of the topics that were outlined when we sort of discussed the general outline of our meeting. Anyone who wants to provide their opinion and share information on the government's support to energy sector during COVID-19 pandemic? Not at the moment. All right.
Good morning.
Yep.
My name is Stefan Sofroniev.
Sofroniev, thank you.
Yes, from the Embassy of Bulgaria. Okay, so unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to prepare more deeply as I wish. But anyway, I can outline some of the main, I can give you a small overview of the sector in Bulgaria and some latest legislative changes.
Very good. Go ahead.
So I hope it will be useful for the participants. In general, we can say that in Bulgaria for the last couple of years, because we are basically exceeding the average share of the renewables in the energy mix. As you know, within the strategy of the European Union for 2020, it should be 20%. The share of the renewable electricity in the gross consumption should be 20%. In Bulgaria, already in 2018, it was 20.5. We can say that we don't give that much incentives to stimulate additionally the investments. Part of the overview, I can tell you that, for example, in 2004, when it was more or less the beginning of this boom of the renewables, the share in Bulgaria of renewable electricity was 9.2%. As I said, in 2018, it was already more than 20%, and it has to be noted that as you know, for each country in the European Union, the targets are a little bit different. So based on the base from which the country is starting. So for Bulgaria, the target is 16% for 2020. As we discussed, it was already reached and way above in 2 years ago. There is also a target related to the transport, the renewable electricity used in the transport. So for the average of European Union for 2020, this is 10%. And for 2018, it was 8%. In Bulgaria, it was already reached. It was a little bit above 8% already share. For example, for 2004, again, at the beginning of this, of the development of this sector, our share of renewable energy in the transport was below 1%. So this is more or less about the overview. and I will tell you, I will speak about two latest legislative changes. Actually, they are about to be voted, which will stimulate, they are supposed to stimulate additionally the development of the renewables in Bulgaria. So it is planned, all the projects, renewable energy projects, which will become operational after January 2021, except for the small roof installations, which already they enjoy some preferential prices. So all those projects that will be operational since 1st of January 2020, they will be exempted from, until now, the requested, the mandatory 5% tax on their incomes, which is supposed to be transferred in the national fund, which is called Security of the Electro Energy System of Bulgaria. So this is one of the legislative changes that most probably will be passed. Yes, and the second one, just a second. The second one is planned from starting from July 2021. All energy producer sites, all energy renewable energy projects, which are above capacity of 500 kilowatts, they will be obliged to sell the produced electricity on the wholesale energy market in Bulgaria. Currently, the ones with capacity below 1 megawatt are exempted from this measure. So those are the two, we can say, the two main latest developments and adjustments in the sector in Bulgaria.
Thank you very much. And in many European countries, respective changes in the legislation, retrospective changes in the legislation, provoked number of investment arbitrations against the government. We know that in Spain, for example, such arbitration processes were successful for the producers relying on renewable energy sources. So if you could share how you assume if the Ukraine's government does not take appropriate actions in order to implement the Memorandum of Understanding, do you expect that renewable energy sources producers will issue claims to the investment arbitration as well? And as far as we see, such application may also satisfy interests of the producers, which will mean additional financial burden on the Ukrainian government and will decrease the trust to the investment climate of the country. And in this respect, the opinion of foreign participants is very, very important. Anyone wants to volunteer their opinion?
Andrei, I'd be happy to take that question. I think the question is exactly the right question to be asking at this point. The government of Ukraine has been very clear that attracting foreign investment and international investment is a top priority, as Valery mentioned off the top. We've seen in repeated sectors and repeated ways how much emphasis the government of Ukraine has put into attracting international investment. And yet, on the other side, we see the treatment of the renewable energy sector, renewable energy investors. And this, one could interpret the government's actions as saying that we will respect the contracts that we sign when it is convenient for us, but when it is not convenient, we won't. That, of course, has had massive repercussions for investors in the renewable energy sector, for the industry itself as a whole. I think the renewable energy sector and investors have been incredibly patient, incredibly accommodating and flexible. I think we've seen over the past number of months phenomenal accommodation and patience on the part of the sector, which has not been reciprocated by the government. We haven't seen evidence, concrete evidence of the government's willingness to fulfill its commitments. And ultimately, I think the question we need to ask ourselves is actions not more important than words? And the actions that we've repeatedly seen of the treatment of investors has not been what one would hope. And to your point, Andre, I think certainly the experience that I've had in other countries is that the mistreatment of foreign investors in one sector is never isolated to that sector. That when investors are looking at a new country, looking at a new investment opportunity, they don't limit themselves to treatment in a particular sector. They look at the overall investment climate, and I worry, frankly, about the very, very clear message that the government's treatment of renewable energy investors sends to the entire investments community.
You actually preempted my question, and I thank you for this, about the impact of problems in the renewable energy sector and the energy sector in general on other sectors of the economy and on the level of investment and the willingness to invest in other sectors. Anyone else wants to share their opinion on this score? Not at the moment. And anyone wants to provide their opinion on what are the general expectations from Ukraine in terms of the implementation of the European Green Deal? Then I would ask Valery Bezos, the Vice President of the Energy Club, to briefly outline what are the problems we are facing with the European Green Deal in this country.
Well, I think the main problem which was mentioned, that the words do not come along with actions. Yeah? We can hear a lot of announcements about future possibilities, opportunities for Ukraine in the new green recovery movement. Yeah, even with the new developments in the field of hydrogen production, hydrogen transportation, and so on. But on the ground, we do not see clear messages for the investors, both foreign and local, that it is secure to invest even in those technologies that are available, yeah, and not to invest, but to secure the investments that are already done. So we hear a lot of voices towards unification of movements in Ukraine with the movement in Europe towards green transformation, but not much of an activities. So I guess this is the main problem. Do we have a clear and real strategy, and do we have real actions coming along with this strategy? And I guess we can conclude that this is the main issue, because we can discuss a lot of nice ideas, you know, how to use our energy capacities to produce clear hydrogen, to transit it to Europe, and so on, to have billions of investments to these capacities, but it's just talks. And recently we had the new information about possible troubles with taxations, with profit taxations, and so on. And those are not the messages which investors want to hear usually, you know. And I guess this is the point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bezos. And Laura Pushinskaite of the Lithuanian Embassy was raising her hand to provide a contribution on the previous question on actually the issue of investment climate, as far as I understand. So go ahead, we're all ears.
Thank you very much. So Lithuania is a small country, but we are deeply concerned as well about the situation that is in renewable energy sector in Ukraine. And this decision to change, Ukraine's decision to change its obligation has eroded investors' confidence and willingness to invest in the country, what we see currently. Foreign investors who have invested in the renewable energy sector already feeling burned, we can say. And our companies who showed interest in investment and developing renewable energy in Ukraine currently stopped all projects that were under preparation. There were plans to install approximately 50 megawatts of renewable energy every year. Our biggest energy producer, Ignitis, was preparing to invest in wind energy. Green Genius already installed around 33 megawatts of solar panels, and they had ideas to invest more and install more solar and energy. So moreover, I should add that officials more carefully now recommend investment in Ukraine, as government and ministries' commitments under the Memorandum of Understanding are not fully implemented. So it would be very sad if the Ukrainian government continues to fall, meeting its obligation. And in such case, there will certainly be many lawsuits in arbitration, and green investors will be active disseminators of negative views of Ukraine investment climate in the press and business communities in Ukraine-friendly countries. So, as a Canadian colleague mentioned, this will affect future investments not only in Ukraine green energy, but also in all other areas. Lithuania, as you may all know, struggled the same situation, but we did a little bit different moves. So there were no restrictions for the operating renewable energy power plants. The decision to reduce rates was made only for the new ones, and the developers who had started investing but decided to stop their investments after the tariff changes. There were compensation mechanism, and they could receive cost incurred. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe this question, or I'm rather sure that this question is totally non-diplomatic, but what means of influencing the Ukrainian government foreign powers have, and what means they are prepared to use? Anyone wants to at least make a hint at this? No? Okay, but we take into account what you have said about the general situation and will make our own conclusions and presumptions. Tatiana Milenko has something to add, and I'm pretty sure that's something very important on the Green Deal issue.
Thank you, Andrei. I just felt that the question you raised is really important, and it goes far about Green Deal and implications that the current situation with green producers could have, and it goes far beyond just the Green Deal even, but further. As we all know, but sometimes it's almost forgotten, and unfortunately almost forgotten, but by policymakers, Ukraine undertook lots of international obligation that it needs to comply with in the sphere of energy in general and renewables in particular. So Green Deal is really a very interesting and hot topic, not only in the EU, but also in Ukraine. And as you know, there are certain business opportunities that could emerge out of it for Ukrainian businesses. I will just mention one, which is being highly on the agenda these days, which is hydrogen production. And as you know, there is a very important document, which is Green Hydrogen Investment and Recovery Report, which is linked and connected to EU hydrogen strategy and to the roadmap of hydrogen development till 2050, which has been elaborated and presented by European Commission in July this year. So it provides for import of roughly 3 million tons of hydrogen from Northern Africa and Ukraine to EU. And also European Union plans to invest roughly 20 billion euro till 2030 for these hydrogen production capacities through electrolysis. So we could, or at least we can now expect somehow that at least portion of these investments will really come to Ukraine. And so for now, the plans are that at least 3.5 billion euro capacity for electrolysis will be made, and around 13 billion euro for construction of wind power plants will be built, and roughly 3 million euro for construction of solar power plants will be built. So I'm talking about the renewables capacity, which will be used for electrolysis and ultimately for production of hydrogen. And in total, it is anticipated that around 10 gigawatts of renewable electricity capacities will be built for aimed for production of hydrogen in Ukraine. And the subsidies could be around 1 billion euro annually. So the amounts are huge. The potential pipeline of investments is really huge and interesting, and should be interesting not only for the companies in Ukraine, private companies that already started doing some technical tests, including the gas transportation system of some DSOs in different regions of Ukraine, if they are actually fit technically to make this import happen. But this should also be interesting for policymakers, for Ukrainian government, for wider establishment, I would say, representatives at high level that represent different ministries, not only Ministry of Energy. And I know that certain interest is there indeed, at least from public sources. We could see that recently there was business meetings of their Ms. Buslavets with representatives of companies also involved in hydrogen in Germany. And so it's very nice to know that there is understanding at a very high level the importance of development of cooperation and getting Ukraine involved into Green Deal, and to make these project opportunities and business opportunities happen. But I totally agree with the representative of the Canadian side that indeed it does not, and the Lithuania, that we are not living in vacuum, right? Here is sector of renewables, and here are other business sectors. So investors that are coming here, they evaluate generally what's their regulatory policy, how they are treated, and they compare how they are treated when they plan to enter Ukrainian business environment, and how they are treated actually when they are there already and their investments made. So it is really important to make all possible efforts to adopt required legislation changes, to continue negotiations, and to find the best efficient way out. But it is unnegotiable that all debts against renewable producers must be paid in full. So this is something that we should all accept. And this is something that should be made really very quickly, in efficient manner, just as I said, because from the talks that I had with clients, potential clients, the patience is almost out. And should the situation will continue, they are really prepared to file notices on arbitration. And this is something that is not just because this is really serious, and our policymakers should treat it seriously. Because from some of them, I heard that they believe that they are just threats from foreign investors, and they are not really serious about it. So I can assure from my side, from my talks with the client, that they are really serious about it, and our policymakers better understand it. And again, within the working group at the Ministry of Energy, I know that practical solutions are being elaborated, have been elaborated, and basically it is understood what needs to be done. It's just the political will that must be applied finally and make these practical solutions happen. So I truly believe that the question will be raised up in the agenda of our policymakers, because the question is really important. So I will not reiterate how important it is to pay to electricity producer from green energy, but it is really so. And it's very important that we, thanks to Energy Club, organize this event, and to also highlight and emphasize its importance. And I also want to thank you, representatives of different embassies, for being here and your voice, because it is really important to be heard. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And for the Energy Club as a think tank, it is always very important to learn of different ideas from different countries. And we have heard from some foreign representatives here, but 2 of our participants have been silent so far. So I implore those people to provide their opinion. And first, I would ask to speak Mr. Jacobo Gil Lopez, the International Trade Advisor at the Embassy of Spain in Ukraine. Mr. Lopez? No answer. And then we have Ms. Alexandra Vatsko from the Norwegian Embassy in Kiev. Anything that you would like to share with us?
I can just echo what has been previously said, that we, as the Norwegian Embassy here in Kiev, as the Norwegian authorities, are also concerned about the current status. And also that we have also been trying to work together with the Ukrainian authorities, with the affected embassies the last spring before the MOU took place. And we still see that there is some work need to be done from the Ukrainian side. And we are also afraid, as my Canadian colleague mentioned, that the investors, they looked at this predictability. And the predictability here for investments are lacking. And for example, the Norwegian companies, the renewable investors, they made almost more than 20% of FDI in Ukraine last year. And that will be for sure not be the case this next year. So it's, yeah, we are also concerned, and we hope that it will be able to find some acceptable conditions for the investors, and also that the Ukraine will regain its investors' trust, because we are seeing that it's lacking. So thank you again for organizing this, and Energy Club for raising this important issue.
And thank you for providing your highly valuable opinion on this. Before I pass the floor to the Vice President of the Energy Club, Valery Bezos, for closing remarks, I would invite everyone to venture their opinion. If there's still something that you want to say, anyone? No, you've been clear and quite outspoken in your statements. Thank you. I'm quite sure that the Energy Club will keep this in mind and put it to good use. However, there's also a question not directly related to the topic of today's discussion, but I am obliged to read it out. And it is from Mr. Kofan, who asks whether Ukraine plans to develop the strategy of the introduction of hydrogen technologies and the transfer of automobile industry from gas and natural gas to hydrogen. I think that this will be quite a topic for one of our future meetings, whether conducted in English or Ukrainian. So we have discussed basically, and I'm pretty sure everyone has said what they planned and wanted to say. Let's make a final wrap up. And I think that hardly anyone could do it better than the Vice President of the Energy Club, Valery Bezos.
Thank you, Andrei. Prior to sum up our meeting, I want to resonate some messages from previous speakers. I want to mention that we need to have even a broader view on Ukrainian and on the energy system in Ukraine. Not only in production sector, we need a huge amount of investment, and both in electricity and the gas sector, to meet even the idea of those opportunities in new energy, green energy transitions. We need huge amounts of investments in the systems of electricity distribution, gas distribution, and gas transition, so on and so on. And thinking of such challenges, it's hard to imagine how we can face it with the history, with such a history with renewables, So it's an issue of high importance for Ukraine to point the clear ways out of this crisis and to move towards green transitions with our partners, and thank you, Tatiana, for mentioning that we have signed documents with the EU, and we have signed documents with agreements with energy community. We have tough obligations to meet. So thank you, colleagues, for joining this quick start of talks, and we hope to proceed with the issue and to communicate it more thoroughly and in more high quality manner. Thank you very much. Let's unite now and work together to face the challenges. Thank you.
With renewed and renewable energy, and knowing the people who stand at the helm of the Energy Club, both Mr. Bezos and the president of the Energy Club, Andrei Kostritsa, I'm pretty sure that quite soon we will get another opportunity given by them to discuss related issues and topics. So keep up the good work. Thank you very much. And you will be able to watch the recording of this discussion at the Energy Club website and their YouTube channel. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.